Alrighty, so we are back with another full slate of MLS action, which means that there's going to be 12 games this weekend. And we're also back with the Friday games, as this top row here on the board are the Fridays game. There's going to be 3 Fridays games, 7 on Saturday, and 2 that is going to be on Sunday. And just looking a little bit more ahead of the schedule, we got 5 midweek games this upcoming week, which means that there's going to be a lot of midweek games I'm going to have to preview on Sunday. But first, let's talk about the weekend games I'm going to be previewing. And we start off with the first one, which is Orlando City take on the Galaxy. Orlando City is 4-3-6, while the Galaxy is 7-1-5, or shall I say, the sinking Galaxy team, because they have now lost 4 in a row after they went on that 6-game winning streak. Well, Orlando City, they of course won 5-1 against FC Cincinnati at home. And in terms of the top goal scorer for the Galaxy, Zlatan currently has 9 goals, but he will not be available for this game because, as you guys remember from last week, he was suspended 2 more games after that incident that he had with Sean Johnson and himself in that LA Galaxy versus NYCFC game. And then Steres, of course, have 3 goals. Atuna with 2, Palanta with 1, and Sebastian Lletget with 1 goal. And the top goal scorer list pretty much says it all. The fact that, yeah, the Galaxy, they pretty much are relying on Zlatan. And it's really like Zlatan or bust for this team. You know, if Zlatan's not scoring, they're not winning. If Zlatans are scoring, then most likely they are going to be winning this game. For Orlando City, Nani currently leads the chart for their team with 7 goals. Dom Dwyer currently have 4 goals. He finally snapped out of that long goal drought that he had in the last game against FC Cincinnati by scoring a goal late. Tesha Akindele with 4 goals, Chris Mueller with 3, and Sasha Kleshin with 1 goal. Now, when I look at this game, and in Orlando City perspective, I think this could go 2 ways for Orlando City. One, it could be like what happened last week against FC Cincinnati, where they're going to absolutely crush the Galaxy because the Galaxy does not have a very good defense, and also they don't have Zlatan again for this game. But on another perspective, it could be what has happened throughout this season for them, which is every time they always have a big performance on offense, the very next game they slump. And that's been really what I think is the inconsistent factor of Orlando City this season, where, you know, this is definitely a decent team, but the problem of why they're not winning a lot of those games where they create those chances and have tons of shots in the stat line is because they just shoot from everywhere and they're not being very clinical with those chances. If they were at least half as clinical as what they are right now, this team would not be finding themselves at the below the red line as they are right now. So yeah, we'll see if Orlando City can follow up that 5-1 win against FC Cincinnati, where, you know, I thought that was the game where they really just, like, they were due for a big goal scoring thrashing performance with the chances that they've created in the past couple of games. And that game basically just showed that they basically released all that kind of pressure that they've been trying to put the ball into the back of the net, and there it is. But the question is, did they basically used up all their goals in that game? But we shall see as they play against the Galaxy in this game. And like I said, the Galaxy, they are sinking really fast. And just after last week against Colorado, there has to be a lot of panic right now with the Galaxy, with the way how, if Zlatan is not on this team and if Zlatan is not scoring, then they are really like the only time when Zlatan wasn't with the Galaxy and the Galaxy kind of have success was, I think it was a game, there was one game that they actually won without Zlatan, but it feels like that game is now kind of an exception because it seemed like every time when Zlatan is not performing this team, they don't win the game or even get a point out of this game. But that being said, moving on into the next game is RSL. They take on Atlanta in this game. RSL is 5-1-6, while Atlanta is 6-2-4. RSL, of course, won 3-0 against CFC at home, while Atlanta lost 1-0 against the Red Bulls in that emotional game between them and the Red Bulls back on last Sunday. For the top goal scorer for RSL, Albert Rusnak leads the team with 5 goals, Sam Johnson with 4, Damar Krylak with 3, Savarino with 2, and Corey Bear with 1 goal. For Atlanta, Joseph Martinez now has 5 goals. So Joseph Martinez, after kind of a slow start to the season, he's started to kind of pick up a little bit in terms of the goal scoring department and now leads the team with 5 goals. Ezekiel Barco with 4 goals. Obviously, he will not be available for this game because he's still with the U20 Argentine team that is currently in the World Cup. Gresso has 2 goals right now. Villalba with 1 goal, and Pity Martinez with 1 goal so far. And, you know, the good news for Atlanta is that Pity Martinez, he will not be going with Argentina for the Copa America this year. So they won't lose him throughout that stretch when they're going to lose a couple of guys that is going to be joining their national team and going to the Copa America. But the bad news is there's a reason why Pity Martinez was not selected by the Argentine team, because he's been pretty bad with Atlanta. He's kind of almost equivalent to what happened with Ezekiel Barco last year, where it's a big money signing and that there was a lot of pressure of him to perform, and it just hasn't worked out whatsoever. Now, the interesting thing is, can he eventually start to perform, and can he start to really show why Atlanta bought him for a record amount of money? Yes, he can definitely do that. He can start, as long as he can start scoring a couple of goals and also assist a couple of goals, then he can get his confidence up. But right now, with the way that he is doing right now and the way that he's playing, it's clear that he is low in confidence and that he's also very frustrated too. Like, every time when he come off after he gets substituted, you know, if he didn't score a goal, you can see him just kicking the chair and just kind of look disgusted because of the way that he's frustrated, the fact that things have not gone the way that he was envisioned when he joined Atlanta this season. But, you know, when you look at this match, this is an interesting one because RSL is very good at home. And they're playing against Atlanta team that they definitely are very angry after that 1-0 loss against the Red Bulls and look to try to bounce back. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who, of course, win this one. I mean, it's kind of really tough to call this one. Consider RSL, like I said, they're very good at home, while Atlanta, they're very angry right now and they want to get a win against RSL so they can bounce back after that emotional loss that they had against the Red Bulls last week. But moving on into the next game is LAFC taking on Montreal. So LAFC, their record is currently 9-4-1, while Montreal, their record is currently 6-3-5. LAFC, of course, drew 1-1 to FC Dallas away, while Montreal drew 0-0 to New England at home. For LAFC, their top goal scorer, Carlos Vela, currently leads the league with 14 goals so far and are currently on pace of breaking Joseph Martinez's record from last season where he scored 30 goals. I mean, if Vela, of course, breaks the record, it is quite amazing how we have back-to-back MLS here where, like, before when Joseph Martinez broke that record, nobody thought that anybody would ever pass 27 goals and able to score more than 27 goals a season. There's been a couple of players that have reached that mark, but nobody thought that it would be possible. And then Joseph Martinez, of course, redefined the logic in that last season record-breaking year. Now, I don't know if Vela does break this record. Is he going to get more recognition? Because last season, a lot of people were shocked of how Martinez broke that record. Will they be shocked again with Vela breaking the record? And for me, I think maybe not as... It won't be as a big of a surprise as what Martinez did last season because, you know, we've seen this before. We've seen a guy able to defy logic and score 30 goals a season. And if there's another guy that follow up, you know, it's another great achievement. But we already kind of see this before. So it kind of relish a little bit of that occasion if we already seen it before last season. But like I said, Vela, he is on pace of breaking Joseph Martinez's record if he can continue to score the way that he is right now. Rossi currently has 7 goals with that team. Mark Anthony K with 3, Diamande with 3, and Ramirez with 2 goals. For Montreal, Taider currently leads the team with 3. Piatti also currently leads the team with 3. And Piatti, I think that this is going to be the game where he's going to be fit enough to play full 90 minutes. He came off the bench last week against New England, and although he didn't make a lot of big impact in the last game, no pun intended by the way, it was clear that everybody was very happy, at least for the Impact fan, are very happy the fact that he is back, because he's the heart and soul of this team. I said it many times with Montreal, and I'm going to say it again. Piatti, if he does well with Montreal, if he's on his game, usually Montreal is going to win the game. But in third place, Jackson Hamill with 2 goals for Montreal, Okawanko with 2 goals, and Urruti with 1 goal. And, you know, on paper, this should be a win for LAFC, but I think this is going to be the toughest opponent that LAFC is going to try to break down. I mean, so far, LAFC, they have faced a lot of different opponents. They have faced opponents that try to bunker against them, and they have faced opponents that try to high press them, and most of those opponents have failed to try to contain LAFC attack. But when you look at this game against Montreal, a team that, in my opinion, is the best bunker team in the league. There's no other team in the league that does well in terms of bunkering than what Montreal is doing right now. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how will LAFC do in terms of try to break down that bunker that Montreal has. And there's going to be no doubt that they're going to dominate possession. And I really think this could either be like a 2 or 3-0 win, or it could be a 0-0 draw between LAFC and Montreal. But moving on into the next match is Chicago. They play against NYCFC. So Chicago is 4-4-5, while NYCFC is 4-6-1. Chicago, of course, lost 4-1 to the Quakes in that last match away, while NYCFC is unbeaten in 7 games, and they did not play last week. They were one of the 2 teams that did not play in last MLS Matchweek number 12. In terms of your top goal scorer for Chicago, Nikolic currently leads the team with 5 goals, but he is really struggling right now, and just seemed like he cannot find the target right now with the way that he's been performing in these last couple of games. CJ Sapong currently has 4 goals. Alexander Katai with 3 goals. Gaitan with 2 goals, but Gaitan will not be available in this game because he's injured. And Frankowski with 1 goal for the Chicago Fire. For NYCFC, Aber with 3 goals, and that he of course leads the team in the goal scoring chart. Tajora Shradi with 2 goals, Morales with 2 goals, Castellano with 2 goals, and Matrita with 2 goals apiece. So there's a 4-way tie for the 2-goal kind of club that NYCFC is kind of developing right now. And you know, it's gonna be interesting to see how Chicago will bounce back after that just horrid loss against the San Jose Earthquakes in the last game, where their defense was just, yeah, it was pretty bad, and just, it was kind of almost disgusting to see how that defense play in that last game against the Quakes. But they are playing against an NYCFC team that is really one of the, if not the hottest team right now, and probably a 7-game unbeaten streak that is really flying under the radar. Like, a lot of people have been talking about the good run in the unbeaten streak of Atlanta and the Red Bulls, but a lot of people don't know that NYCFC, they've been unbeaten in 7 games, and they have not lost a game ever since Domai Turin said that he was under pressure. And yeah, I mean, this team is started to look like the team that what many people thought could be, and it could be a team that is going to be competing in the playoffs. But they are going to be facing a Chicago team that has been pretty decent at home, and they definitely want to try to forget that disastrous match that they had in the last game against the Quakes. But moving on, in the next match is Vancouver. So they play against FC Dallas. Vancouver, their record is 3-5-6, while FC Dallas' record is 5-3-5. Vancouver, of course, drew 2-2 to the Red Bulls away, while Dallas drew 1-1 against LAFC at home. In terms of the top goal scored for Vancouver, Freddie Montero leads the team with 4 goals. Daniel Henry with 2 goals for Vancouver. Las Bengora with 1. Jordi Reyna with 1. And Imbang Kwan with 1 goal for Vancouver. For Dallas, Jesus Ferreira with 4 goals that leads the team in the goal scoring department. Rito Ziegler with 3 goals, Michael Barrios with 2, Paxi Palmico with 2, and Ryan Hollinshead with 2 goals so far for FC Dallas. And this is a game that for Vancouver, I think when you look at this record, you would think that they're not really having a good season, but I think their record doesn't really imply the fact that in the last couple of games they have looked very, very decent, and a team that a lot of people need to really kind of be worried about, because this team, in the last game when they play against the Red Bulls, they really were toe-to-toe against the Red Bulls. And yes, they were playing against a Red Bulls team that had a short week, and a Red Bulls team that kind of had that emotional letdown against Atlanta. But don't forget, this was also a Vancouver team that had to travel all the way across the other side of the country on a short week, and they really took it against the Red Bulls. That is how impressive this Whitecaps team has been playing. And against FC Dallas, a Dallas team that is still going through this kind of downward spiral where, they start the season pretty well, but now they started to kind of struggle a little bit, and especially whenever they go on the road. The road has not been a friend for FC Dallas this season. They have lost a lot of road games so far this season and have dropped a lot of points on the road. This is definitely going to be a big opportunity once again for Vancouver, that has definitely looked very decent at home so far, and just overall in the last couple of games they have looked very decent. I have a feeling that they could definitely win this one, and I'm not really going to call this an upset, because the Whitecaps, like I said, in the last couple of games, they have really looked impressive and really looked like the team that could actually go above the red line and maybe even move a little bit more higher in the Western Conference. But moving on into the next match, and actually the final match on this board before I switch the board, is New England. So they play against DC United. New England currently have a record of 3-3-8, while DC currently have a record of 7-3-4. This, I think, is the second game for Bruce Arena in charge of the New England Revolution. And in his first game, they drew 0-0 away to Montreal, while DC lost 2-1 away to Houston. DC also played a midweek game this week, but it wasn't in MLS. It was just a friendly match where they lost 5-2 against Real Betis. And that was the game where, a lot of people will see that game as a game that, it's clear that MLS have not really caught up to some of the big European league, like La Liga, where Real Betis is from. But when you look at that DC United team that play against Real Betis, that was a B team. And although DC was also facing a Real Betis team that also put their B team, it's clear that you can clearly see that the B team for MLS and the reserve team for most of these team in MLS is nowhere near as good as the B and reserve team that you will see in Europe. But to say that MLS have not really kind of caught up to Europe and seen that resort as a way to prove that, that's clear. You clearly have not watched a lot of these MLS games, and I have a feeling if DC did put their starting 11 against Real Betis in that game, they would have put up a huge fight against Real Betis and might even win that game. And this is not just me being deluded. I think that could be the case with the fact that DC does have a lot of talent on their team. But I understand why they decided to put their reserve team, because it's a friendly. It doesn't really matter, and you don't want to risk injury to your players that when you play a friendly game, the thing that you fear the most is not actually lose a game, but the thing that you fear the most is actually losing player to injury, because a friendly game doesn't really matter. There's a reason why it's called a friendly and it's called an exhibition game. But in terms of the top goal scored for both of these teams, New England, they currently have Carlos Hill as the top goal scorer with 4 goals so far. Caicedo with 3 goals, Pineda with 2 goals, Agudelo with 2 goals, and Anibaba with 1 goal. there for New England. For DC, Wayne Rooney currently leads the chart with 7 goals with the team. Lucho Acosta with 3. Paul Arriola with 3 goals. But Arriola will not be available for this game because he got that red card last week against Houston. Rodriguez with 2 goals and Ulises Segura with 1 goal for DC United. And you know, DC in these last couple of games on the road, they have definitely looked like the DC team that we know of in the past whenever they go on the road, which is they don't usually win them. I mean, this is why I was very surprised in the first couple of weeks when DC was started to pick up road wins, albeit some of those road wins that they had was against pretty easy team. I mean, they got a road win against Colorado, which, you know, anybody except for the Galaxy could actually get at least a point or even all 3 points against Colorado, no matter home or away. And the fact that the other opponent that they got a win was against Columbus, which, you know, that Columbus team and the current Columbus team right now is just going through a downward spiral. So it's not like some of those road wins that they had was impressive. And the other road wins that I also remember is against Orlando City. And Orlando City is kind of a hot and cold team. So it's not like those road wins were just overly impressive, and it's, again, a very tough team. And, you know, this is a game that they're going to be playing that kind of sort of a road game where they're playing a team that is not very overly impressive. But New England, you know, with a new manager, with just a kind of a reshuffle kind of thinking and their philosophy of this team, you know, this could definitely be a tricky match for DC to play, and New England definitely want to get their first win for their newly appointed manager, Bruce Arena. But that being said, let's now switch the board and look at the other 6 games that will happen this week in MLS Matchweek number 13. Alrighty, so next up is the Union. They take on the Portland Timbers. The Union is 7-3-3, who is currently leading in the Eastern Conference, while Portland is 3-2-6. Philly, of course, drew 0-0 to Seattle at home in the last game, while Portland drew 1-1 to Houston away in the last game. Top goal scorer for Philly, David Acom, currently has 4 goals, but he is no longer with the team as he was traded to Columbus and then got traded to Nashville just this week. Shabilko with 3 goals for the Union, Izinho with 2, Montero with 2, and Bedoya with 2 goals. As for Portland, Bobasi currently leads the list with 4 goals, Diego Valeri with 2, Blanco with 2, Paredes with 1, and Brian Fernandez with 1 goal. But something tells me that this guy is going to be right near the top of the list by the end of the season because, you know, he made his debut in the last game against Portland, and he scored on his debut. And, you know, for Portland, you know, there's an old saying that the light is at the end of the tunnel. It is really the case for the Timbers, as this is the last road game that they are playing in this record amount of 12-game road trip that no other team has ever faced before, let alone to start the season. And so far, you know, when you look at this 12-game road trip, despite the fact that the Timbers are kind of like sitting in 10th place, and you would think when you look on the table, they're not really right at where you want them to head to by the end of the road trip so that they can be in good shape for making the playoffs. The points total tells otherwise. They actually have now got 11 points out of their first 11 games, and they're only like, I think, 5 points or 4 points back of RSL in that last playoff spot, and they also have a game in hand over RSL in that last playoff spot. So they are actually in very good shape right now. This is exactly where the Timbers should be playing, and especially with the way how the road trip started. Nobody would have thought that they would be like right here, and that after just going 7-game winless to start the road trip, and that now they started to pick it up. Yeah, nobody thought that that was going to be happening. But in this game, just to finish their road trip, they are going to be facing a big test against the Union, who is the top team in the Eastern Conference, and they're going to be facing a Philly team that obviously want to win this one. I mean, the last game, you know, even though they drew 0-0 against one of the best teams in the league, that is the Seattle Sounders, they should have won that one. Seattle didn't really play their best team. They absolutely dominated that game. But in that game against Seattle, they basically went back to the Union of last year, where they can create chances but cannot finish it. And that was the story of them in the last game. And This is also going to be a tough game for them against the Timber. I mean, the record doesn't say the fact that the Timbers are a tough team for the Union to face, but when you look at what the Timbers have done in the last 5 games, able to get points in 4 out of the 5 games, and the only game that they didn't get all 3 points and drop all 3 points was that Vancouver game, where they probably should have at least deserved to get 1 or if not all 3 points, and a game where they had 27 shots. That at that point, it looked like that was the game where I think it's the first time where I've seen a team had that many shots on goal and yet they didn't score a goal, and of course didn't win the game until, of course, TFC basically just told Portland to hold their beer and decided to have 36 shots in that game, but not scoring a single goal. But at least TFC drew that game, and Portland didn't actually get a point out of that one. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Portland will do in this game, and let's see if the Union can bounce back after that tough game against Seattle, where they weren't able to get all 3 points despite they dominated. But moving on into the next match is the struggling FC Cincinnati taking on the New York Red Bulls. And the reason why I say they're struggling is that their record is 3-2-8, which is the worst record in the Eastern Conference. They're at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, playing against a Red Bulls team that has certainly started a resurgence and drew 2-2 at home. Well, they won 1-0 against Atlanta and then kind of had that letdown against Vancouver at home 2-2. But still, this is a team that, when you look at how they started this season and now where they are, you would think that, yeah, they have definitely started a resurgence and look like the Red Bulls team that we should know of. And the other interesting thing that I want to say about the Red Bulls is that this week, Chris Armas, he actually told people that he was not happy with the fact that the media is kind of keep putting negativity over his team and saying that, why are you being so negative with this team when you saw what we have done in the past couple of years, winning Supporters' Shield and making the playoffs? And in some way, I do kind of agree with him saying the fact that, yeah, the media is just being too negative. It feels like we're just keep getting negatively for our team just because we're off to a poor start. But having said that, I think this is kind of what happened when you are coaching the Red Bulls, and this is what happened when you decide to set the Red Bulls in a very high standard and kind of like an MLS Cup or bust kind of standard that the Red Bulls had. I mean, in many ways, I think the Red Bulls kind of reminds me a little bit of the San Jose Sharks, where this is a team like the San Jose Sharks regularly make the playoffs, and like the San Jose Sharks, they have won a Supporters' Shield. The Sharks obviously won a President's Trophy, which is equivalent to the Supporters' Shield in hockey. But one thing that is very common between the Red Bulls and the Sharks is that they still haven't won a cup. The Red Bulls still have not won an MLS Cup, despite the fact that they have won so many Supporters' Shield in the past couple of years. But yet, that MLS Cup is always the one that is going to linger them. And that's where I think the negativity might be on, where if they would have won a cup, last year, I don't think there's going to be as much of a negativity. I think it's just going to be people saying, well, it's a little bit of a hangover effect, kind of like what Atlanta is dealing with in the beginning of the season. But yeah, I understand Chris Armas is frustrated the fact that his team is repeatedly getting negative takes against his team, even though they're actually started doing much better. But that's what happened when you decide to set high standard on your team. But going back to this game in terms of the top goal scorer, for FC Cincinnati, Maddox Cruz is currently tied the team with top goal scorer with only 2 goals. Kenny Sayev with 1, Bertone with 1, and Lamar with 1 goal. For the Red Bulls, White with 3 goals, Royers with 2, Cassier Jr. with 2, Mule with 2, and Tchaikovsky with 1 goal. And I think the Red Bulls should be able to win this one because FC Cincinnati, just as you thought that maybe they turn a corner against Montreal, they absolutely dropped the ball on the road and lost 5-1 in this game. And this is a good opportunity for the Red Bulls to take advantage, facing against a weak team which they already beat 1-0 at home, and that they can, of course, get all 3 points again and cap off a week with a good 7-point span in the last 7 days. But moving on into The next match is Minnesota. So Minnesota is 5-3-4 while they're taking on the Houston Dynamo, which is 7-2-2. Minnesota, of course, won their second ever home game at Allianz Field with a 1-0 win over the Columbus Crew, while Houston, of course, won 2-1 against DC at home. Top goal scorer for Minnesota, Quintero currently leads the team with 5, Rodriguez with 4, Ibarra with 2. But, of course, Romero Ibarra is now on loan with Pachuca, Gregus with 1, and Ozzy Alonso with 1 goal. For Houston, Manotas currently leads the team with 6 goals, Memo Rodriguez with 5, Albert Feliz with 4, Thomas Martinez with 2, and Tommy Martinera is actually now have 2 goals with this team. And yeah, this is definitely going to be an interesting test for Houston. You know, we've been saying that Houston should belong in that category of the elite team in the league. But the thing is about Houston and the big kind of asterisk mark, that is the reason why people aren't saying that they're one of the top team in MLS, is because they have so many home games to start the season and they face so much easy team. And you know, last week they definitely made a statement against DC United, but it was a home game. If that was a road game, then yeah, I think people would have paid more attention and say that Houston really belong in that top echelon of MLS. And in this game against Minnesota, while Minnesota did win 1-0 against Columbus, Minnesota has definitely not looked that decent and are still kind of struggling in terms of putting chances away. So for the Dynamo, this is a good chance where they can get something out of Minnesota, which, you know, Minnesota this season at home hasn't been as good as they were last season at home. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if the Dynamo can do that, or we'll see if Minnesota can build on that 1-0 win against Columbus and get back-to-back wins at Allianz Field. And they definitely want to start getting wins at Allianz Field and at home, because this team always tends to rely on their home form for a way to trying to make it to the playoffs. But moving on into the next match is Colorado. So the Rapids are no longer winless. They, of course, finally ended that miserable 12-game winless run by beating the Galaxy 1-0 away, and their record now is officially sits at 1-2-9. While Columbus, they currently have a record of 5-1-8. Although Columbus, their miserable run continue after losing to Minnesota in the last game, and that after that one, they have now lost 7 of the last 8 games. Top goal scorer for Colorado, Kamara actually have 7 goals with the Rapids. So despite the fact that the Rapids are just having a historically bad season, their top goal scorer actually have scored more goals than most of the teams that currently right now in MLS has in terms of their top goal scorers. So Kamara with 7 goals, Feilhaber with 2 goals, but he is no longer on the team. Shinyashiki, of course, scoring the winner against the Galaxy in the last games, have 2 goals now. Kellen Acosta with 1 and Tommy Smith with 1 goal. For Columbus, Jarzy Zardes currently have 4 goals, Pedro Santos with 2, Saros with 2, Higuain with 1, and Jimenez with 1 goal. And you know, for Colorado, after that impressive win against the Galaxy away, this is a good opportunity for them to get back-to-back wins against a Columbus team that is just heading to a downward spiral right now. And, you know, we'll see if they can do that. I mean, I know Rapids fan, they were celebrating like they won the MLS Cup in the last game after winning their first game of the season. Now let's see if they can start to get things going. Because sometimes when you see a team that is endured on a long winless run, when you finally get that win after a long winless run, that's when really the pressure kind of takes off of you, and that's when you can start to go on a little bit of a run. And Colorado, you know, after they finally ended this record-breaking winless run to start the season, maybe they can definitely go on a run right now. And playing against a team like Columbus that is heading to a downward spiral, this could be a good opportunity where they can get all 3 points at home. But that being said, moving on into the next game and moving on into the Sunday game is SKC take on Seattle. So SKC, well, They are definitely having a rough start to the season with a record of 2-5-4, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that they have so much injury that they're dealing with. Although most of those guys are starting to kind of come back and they're slowly starting to be a little bit more healthy. While they're playing against a Sounders team that currently have a record of 7-5-1 and are currently second in the Western Conference. SKC, of course, they're winless in 6 games, while Seattle did drew 0-0 to Philly away in that last game. Top goal scored for SKC, Namath currently have 7 goals. Russell and Gutierrez both with 4 goals. Gianluca Busio with 3 goals. And Sanchez with 1 goal. For Seattle, Morris and Ruidíaz both tied with 4 goals. Leerdam currently has 3 goals. Rodon with 3 goals. And Ladero with 3 goals. And I think when you look at this game, this is a game where both teams really need a win. And it might sound weird, the fact that I'm saying that Seattle really need a win in this game, but when you look at Seattle, despite the fact that they're 7-5-1, and this has been the best start that they have to a season in what seemed like a long time, and what seemed like first time ever they had this kind of start of a season in their existence in MLS, they will know that they are on a long road trip right now, and that they know that Copa America and Gold Cup is right around the corner, and I don't think there is any team in the league. Well, there's probably maybe 1 or 2 teams that's going to lose a lot of big time stars because of Copa America and Gold Cup. But for Seattle, they're kind of one of those teams that is going to lose a lot of big star player to Copa America and the Gold Cup. Guys like Morris potentially, Ruidíaz, Rodon, Ladero, all those guys is going to be either going to the Gold Cup or going to Copa America to represent their national team. And during that period, that's when Seattle is going to, they're going to really, their main kind of stars and the guys that kind of hold the spine of this team is all going to be missing in duty. And that's when I think that they're going to start to hit a bit of a tough patch. And while they're having a very good record right now, if they do hit that tough patch during that period, that's when they're going to fall down the table, which is why it is so important for them to get as much win as possible before they are potentially going to hit that tough patches during that period of Copa America and the Gold Cup. And they're playing against a Sporting KC team that, like I said, they are really struggling to start the season. They're winless in 6 games, and although they're starting to get some of the guys back healthy, you know, they're still missing a couple of key players, and some of those key players that just got back from injuries, they're not 100% healthy. So, but at the same time, you know, for Sporting KC, they got to eventually get things going. Like, this is an ugly record. This is a record that I definitely did not expected them, and they're definitely making me look bad in terms of what I made my prediction saying that they'll finish top of the Western Conference. That obviously probably will not happen by the end of the year. But still, at least they need to start to get this going and started to try to kind of do what the Red Bulls and Atlanta is doing. Have a poor start to the season. Let's start winning a couple of games and start to make ourselves back into the playoff spot and go above the red line. But yeah, moving on to the final game that I will talk about. And I think this is the first time that I actually have talk about the Quakes as the last game that I would be talking about in the previews, because it's not very often the Quakes play on a Sunday, and it's not very often that they are playing the last game of the MLS Matchweek. But that's exactly what happened this week as they be going on the road against TFC. Unfortunately, this is not going to be a national televised game because, you know, this is going to be one of those games. You usually think whenever Sunday games happen and whenever teams play on Sundays, they're going to be featured on national television. Unfortunately, this is not going to be the case unless if you count TSN as a national television, which, yeah, I guess in some way, I mean, TSN is the national sports broadcast in Canada, so in some way it's kind of a national television game in Canada, but it's not really in the US. But talk about this game. TFC, their record is 5-2-5, while the Quakes, their record is 4-2-6. TFC, of course, lost 3-0 away to RSL, while the Quakes, as I mentioned before, they won 4-1 against Chicago in that historic Wando performance that got him the MLS all-time goal scoring record. In terms of the top goal scorer, Pozuelo currently have 5 goals, but he will not be available in this game because he got a red card in the last one. Altidore currently have 5 goals. He would be available for this game, and I'm assuming he's probably going to start in this game. Osorio with 3 goals, Hamilton with 3 goals, and Jay Chapman with 2 goals. As for San Jose, Salinas currently have 4 goals. Wando currently have 4 goals too. That, of course, is those 4 goals, of course, came in the last game against the Chicago Fire. While Danny Houston currently have 3 goals, Espinoza currently have 2, and Eriksson currently have 2 goals. So while Pozuelo is not going to be available in this game, which that is maybe a little bit of a silver lining for the Quakes, that we don't have to face against probably one of the best DP player in the league right now, we do still have to face Altidore, who is, Altidore, he is definitely a lethal finisher, and he is a guy that TFC are desperately miss for these last couple of games. Like, these last couple of games, TFC have looked really toothless on the attack, and the only reason why it's been like that is because Altidore is not there. Although, having said that, it seemed like at the same time, TFC, if they do not have Pozuelo and Altidore on the same pitch, their attack seems to be a little bit lackluster and seems to be a little bit toothless. So that might be another silver lining for the Quakes. Although for the Quakes, one thing that I am a little bit worried about them is that, one, they're playing on the road, which you know what that means whenever the Quakes are playing on the road. They're not going to always get a result, and especially they're playing against an Eastern Conference team on the road, which to me that automatically eliminates our chances of getting a win, because I don't even remember the last time the Quakes were able to go on the road, play an Eastern Conference team, and able to get all 3 points. It's been a very long time. And even though when I was so confident in the last road game when they play an Eastern Conference opponent that is New England, and that New England was kind of like struggling a little bit, they absolutely dropped the ball in that game and lost 3-0 in that one. So I'm not going to say that I am super confident that the Quakes can get something out of this game against a struggling TFC team, and it's going to be a bit of a mystery to see how they're going to do in that game. I mean, in the last game, yes, they won 4-1 against Chicago, and yes, the score line will tell that they had an amazing game, but really, the reason why we won the game is because Wando decided to have a historical performance, and also the fact that Chicago was just poor on the defensive end, and they couldn't finish on the attack. I mean, I think when you look at that scoreline, right away you would think that it was a dominant win. It kind of wasn't, consider how the defense, especially in the first half, was just god-awful. And we got away with a couple of bad mistakes in the defensive end, and that game could have easily, like at halftime, Chicago could have easily be 1-1 or even 2-1 up at halftime, and that would have changed a lot of competition of that game. So, for the Quakes, I'm not going to be super confident that they can get all 3 points or even get a point out of this. If they can get a point out of this, I will be happy, because Eastern Conference and the road has just been a complete nightmare for the Quakes for the last couple of years. But if they can get a point or even all 3 points, I would think that, yeah, this team can definitely maybe make a run, and maybe I can finally say that they can make the playoffs. But now that I said it, I probably just jinx myself and jinx the team, and that they're probably gonna not make the playoffs. That being said, there you have it. That is pretty much it for all the MLS Matchweek game. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these games? Which one are you gonna really keep an eye on? And also let me know in the comments below in terms of prediction of all 12 of these games. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.